you've seen it before. Not this image specifically, but this feeling. That crawling certainty that something in a photograph is deeply, cosmically wrong. Your eyes slide across the green grass, drift up to the clouds, and then there. Your brain stalls like a car engine in frozen water. A door, standing alone in the middle of a field. No frame, no wall, no building. Just a door, perfectly upright, perfectly black, in the center of an ocean of green. And here's what nobody tells you about that image. The one you're looking at right now. Static rituals. It was taken 43 seconds before the photographer ceased to exist. Not died, ceased to exist. There's a difference. A terrible, yawning difference that I'm going to spend the next 15 minutes explaining to you. And by the end, you're going to understand why I need you to do one very specific thing. Do not look directly at the door in this image for more than 7 seconds. You've probably already done it. I'm sorry. Let's begin. Part 1. The Cartographer of Wrong Doors. The man who first documented the phenomenon called himself Elias Venn, though that almost certainly wasn't his real name. In the creepypasta archives, in the deep web folklore repositories, in the crumbling subreddits that vanish and reappear on lunar cycles, Elias Venn is referred to simply as the Cartographer. A man who spent 11 years mapping doors that should not exist. Not metaphorical doors, not haunted houses or cursed thresholds. Freestanding doors in open spaces. His first documented case was in rural Hungary, 2003. A farmer named Benedek Ola called the local municipality to report a strange structure in his wheat field. When officials arrived, they found a single wooden door, painted black, standing perfectly upright without any support. No hinges attached to anything, no handle on the far side. The door simply stood there. The way doors do when they're where they're supposed to be, except it wasn't where it was supposed to be, and nothing about it obeyed any law that a door is meant to obey. They pushed it over. It stood back up. They pushed it over again. It stood back up faster. By the third attempt, the door was upright before it finished falling. Benedek Ola burned his field that night. He told his wife it was blight. She believed him because the alternative, the thing she glimpsed from the farmhouse window, the way the door had opened slightly in the moment before the flames reached it, the darkness visible through that crack that was so much deeper than any darkness a door should reveal. The alternative was not something a sane person assembled into words. Elias Venn arrived 3 days later. He had, he claimed, a network of informants across 40 countries, people who understood what to look for. Rural officials, farmers, shepherds, the kind of people who spend enough time in open spaces that they notice when something impossible decides to simply be there. His notes, which were uploaded to a now-defunct website called wrongdoors.net in 2009, describe the doors in obsessive detail. All doors are black. Not painted black, intrinsically black the way a hole is black. Light does not reflect from them. Photographs taken directly facing the door show the door as a perfect rectangle of void. The doors appear in fields, plains, plateaus, and occasionally beaches, always in locations where the horizon is visible in at least 3 directions. They do not appear in forests. They do not appear in cities. They require witnesses of the sky. The doors are always closed. They are always unlocked. They have never, in any documented case, been opened by a human being. That last line is important. They have never been opened by a human being. Because the question Venn never answered the question that threads through all 15 of his documented cases like a fishing line through a corpse. is this. If humans have never opened the doors, why do they sometimes stand slightly ajar? Ven's seventh case brought him to Japan, to the Hokkaido plains, green, wide, impossibly flat. The kind of landscape that looks like God stretched it with his thumbs. A door had appeared overnight in a field outside a small farming town. By the time Ven arrived, the town had already developed a ritual. Nobody looked at it directly. They'd figured this out on their own in the space of 48 hours, through a process of terrible trial and error that Ven documented with clinical detachment. Day 1. 3 residents approached the door out of curiosity. All 3 reported the same experience, a sound like radio static heard through water, followed by the sensation that the sky had rearranged itself slightly. One woman, Haruka, said it was as if the clouds moved to positions they had occupied some hours earlier. She was disoriented, but unharmed. Day 2. A teenager named Riku decided to touch the door. He reached out, made contact with the surface, and immediately withdrew his hand. He told his parents the door was warm, not sun-warm, warm like a mouth. He began referring to the field as the waiting room, without being able to explain why. He stopped sleeping. He could be heard at night walking to his window and standing there for hours, facing the field. Day 3. A man named Goto, a retired schoolteacher, looked at the door for what witnesses estimated was between 8 and 12 seconds of sustained direct eye contact. He then calmly walked inside his house, sat at his kitchen table, and began writing. He wrote for 6 hours without stopping. When his family finally interrupted him, they found 42 pages covered in a language no one recognized. Goto himself could not read it. He wept when they took it from him, not from distress, but from what he described as grief for something I almost remembered. Ven noted that the town's instinctive solution, the averted gaze, the peripheral awareness, was correct. He noted it with the tone of a man who had arrived at this conclusion too late for it to be useful to him personally. His notes from Case 7 end mid-sentence. The sentence reads, "The door is not a door in the way we understand doors. It is an interface between then nothing." Ven's informant network continued without him. His notes were compiled and uploaded by someone identifying themselves only as a former colleague, who included a single additional document, a photograph. The photograph showed a green field, blue sky, white clouds, and in the center, a black door. Below the photograph, 3 words: "He went through." Now here's where it gets strange. Static rituals. And I want you to stay with me because this is where the story stops being about Elias Ven and starts being about the image you are looking at right now. The photograph in Ven's archive, the one his colleague uploaded. Run it through a reverse image search. Go ahead. I'll wait. You'll find exactly one match. This image. Not a similar image. Not an image from the same location. The exact same image. Down to the pixel. Down to the specific grain of the film filter. Down to the timestamp embedded in the metadata, which reads not as a calendar date, but as a temperature, 37.0 degrees Celsius. The temperature of a human body, the temperature of a mouth. The wrongdoors.net community, which migrated to forums, to Discord servers, to encrypted channels that kept getting shut down and reappearing somewhere else. Like the doors themselves developed a taxonomy over the years. A field guide to impossible doors. They classified them by behavior. Class 1, the witness, a door that simply stands. It doesn't react to human presence. It doesn't open. It watches. These are the most common. These are also, the community eventually realized, the most dangerous, because their passivity reads as safety. Class 2, the caller, a door that produces effects. At a distance, the static sound, the sky displacement, the temporal disorientation, Riku's warm door was a Class 2. If you felt something just now, static rituals, looking at this image if the room seemed slightly quieter, or you noticed that you've been sitting in the same position for longer than you thought, you've made contact with a Class 2. Class 3. The writer. A door that rewrites. Goto's experience was Class 3 contact. The 42 pages in the unknown language were later analyzed by 3 separate linguists, all of whom independently described it as not a language but a map. A map of what? They couldn't say. None of them slept well after reading it. One resigned her position at the university and moved to a coastal town and spent the rest of her career painting seascapes, always with a black rectangle somewhere in the middle distance. Class 4. The community never agreed on a name for Class 4. The description in their documentation simply reads, "A door you can see from inside, after." They couldn't explain what after meant. The members who tried to explain it stopped posting, not dramatically, not with a final message. They simply had a last post, mundane and normal, and then nothing. And when other members reached out, their accounts were gone, their emails bounced, and their usernames returned no results on any platform, as if they had never made an account at all, as if they had never existed. Not died, ceased to exist. Are you beginning to understand the difference?